They just had a memorial service for Officer Rafael Ramos, who was shot in New York. He's one of the two cops that were killed in Brooklyn. He's 40 years old. He left behind a young son who loved him dearly. It's a tragic story. He was basically studying to be a pastor. He's the unofficial chaplain of his precinct, and he's just a beloved guy. And thousands of people show up. The mayor obviously shows up to give a speech. And inside, treated somewhat warmly, polite applause, etc. But outside, there are hundreds of cops, and they turn their backs to him. They did it again. And they had done this to him at the hospital. And so this is a common theme. It's led by Patrick Lynch, who's the head of the Police Benevolence Association, the largest union for cops in New York. He obviously does not get along with Mayor DeBlasio, but he's almost never gotten along with any of the mayors of New York. One of his top issues is demanding more money. We'll get to that in a minute. But he was asked by a CNN reporter outside, hey, why did you guys do this? Let's watch what happens.
A lot of police officers, hundreds if not thousands of them, turned their back as the mayor spoke on this church. Do you think that's okay?
The feeling is real, but today is about mourning, tomorrow is about debate.
What would you tell those police officers?
We have to understand the betrayal that they feel. But today we also come to bow our head in mourning, and tomorrow we'll debate.
And how does the city get going?
Good questions there by CNN reporter Miguel Marquez. Patrick Lynch, if tomorrow is about politics, why did you do your political act today? So when you had all those cops turn around, and it's obvious that he's leading this effort, he did it in the hospital, and he said the mayor has blood on his hands. Okay? So what did you think was going to happen? They weren't going to cover Ramos and his life. They were immediately going to be enthralled by the idea that the cops and the mayor are fighting. In fact, look at the New York Post headline the next day. It doesn't say anything about Officer Ramos. It doesn't, tiny print at the bottom. But it has the cops turning their back on, by the way, not the mayor, but a screen of the mayor, which is even more goofy if you ask me. And it says to serve and reject. So, of course you knew you were going to get media attention for this. That's why you did it. And you didn't worry about too soon. You didn't worry about focusing attention on Officer Ramos, whose life was lost. You worried about how you were going to make your political points. Now, let's go to the Associated Press for context here. Police union officials in contentious contract negotiations, interesting, with the city have faulted DeBlasio for showing sympathy to protesters angry over the police deaths of Michael Brown in Ferguson and Eric Gardner on Staten Island. So yes, this is partly to do with the issues of the guy who shot the cops writing on Twitter that it has to do with Eric Garner and Michael Brown. He also shot his girlfriend, which obviously had nothing to do with Michael Brown or Eric Garner. The guy was obviously mentally unstable. But also it happens to do with contract negotiations. Interesting. So that's how you want to play it, Patrick Lynch. Okay. And more context as to why they're angry with DeBlasio. Soon after taking office this year, DeBlasio dropped the city's opposition to a judge's finding that the police department discriminated against minorities with its anti-crime stop and frisk tactics. In other words, the new mayor, as he promised, said that we would stop this stop and frisk tactics by the NYPD and that it might have been discriminatory. Now, he ran on that. That's how he got 3/4 of the votes in New York City, which is as big a landslide as I have ever seen. Obviously, the citizens of New York agree with him, but the cops are pissed. How dare you represent the citizens? You're supposed to be working on our behalf, on power protects power, right? That's why they're turning their back on him, because he's basically gone to their little party and said, I'm going to actually represent the people. And they said, how dare you? We're only supposed to represent ourselves, the powerful here, right? So that's what's happening here, and the contract negotiations are a huge part of it. Bill Bratton, the new police chief, agrees and has said over and over again, contract negotiations are a huge part of this. Now, we go to Giuliani. He's a former mayor of New York. Of course, he's a Republican. He disagrees with DeBlasio. He's going to say even he disagrees with the idea of turning their back on him. But listen to what he says at the end as well.
The mayor of the city of New York should not be blamed for the murder of those police officers. That issue should not have been injected. It's wrong. I told the mayor that yesterday, and I don't support that. So I want to be clear on that. Mm-hmm. Number two, the mayor is not in any way to be treated with people turning their backs. Doesn't matter if you like the mayor or you don't like the mayor. You have to respect the mayor's position. I don't support that. But I do believe Mayor DeBlasio should apologize to the New York City Police Department. I said it day one, and I think he'd get this over with if he did it.
Now, they shouldn't turn their backs on him, but it is definitely DeBlasio's fault. How is it DeBlasio's fault? Wait, did he do the shooting? Did he encourage the shooting? No, it was, we've shown you on the program before, well before the shooting. He said over and over again, violence has no place in this, and that the cops are should be protected, and under no circumstance should there be any violence against anybody, let alone cops. Doesn't matter what he said, they're going to twist what he said into their own political benefit. So it's definitely DeBlasio's fault, if you ask Giuliani. So he's saying, the cops shouldn't have done that, but they kind of should have. And he goes further here.
He created an impression with the police. And I don't know that he wanted to do it. He probably didn't. But he created an impression with the police that he was on the side of the protesters. Now, some of those protesters were entirely legitimate, but some of those protesters were horrible, yelling, "Kill the police, kill the police, kill the police." I don't ever remember protests with people yelling, "Kill the police," since the 1960s and 70s. He should have apologized for the remarks that he made that gave the police the impression that he's on the other side. And I'm giving this advice in good faith. It is not political. It's like a former mayor. Mayor DeBlasio, please say you're sorry to them for having created a false impression of them. You did create a false impression of them. Say you're sorry. Say you didn't realize.
Say it! Say it! No, I'm not doing this for politics. No, he just happens to go all over television and talk about how DeBlasio is wrong, and he dared to be on the side of protesters in a democracy. Outrageous! How dare he? He should have crushed those protesters and been on the side of the cops, right? But this is not political. He's just giving friendly advice. Oh, thank you, Rudy. We really appreciate it. Some of the protesters are bad. Yeah, did the mayor vet every guy in the protest and say, you have the right, First Amendment rights to protest. You, I don't like your opinions as much. I'm against you. Was that what the mayor was supposed to do? Is that what we're all supposed to do? We're supposed to figure out everybody who's in that crowd, right? And the people in that crowd didn't kill the cops. It was a guy out of Baltimore who had just shot his girlfriend. It had nothing to do with the protesters, right? But de Blasio had it coming. The cops had to turn their back on him because he was not with the cops when the protesters said, hey, maybe the cops should stop killing us. Outrageous when you represent the entire city and 3/4 of the city that voted for you. How dare you be with the citizens instead of the cops?